Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ross's Corner. We are getting closer and closer to the big day, and if you're doing the ultra, then you'll be in that period now when you're running your qualifiers, so you should have a reasonable idea of whether things are on track. If you're doing the half and you're looking for a PB or a good time, then now's the time when you should be doing a lot of 10 kilometer, 15 kilometer races, maybe work on your seeding and test your training so far. What I want to talk about very briefly today is something that is at least as important as the physical side of training, but it's something that's often neglected, and that's the mental discipline and the belief that you teach yourself through training. We tend to think that when we go out and do our training sessions, we're improving our hearts and our lungs and our muscles and our metabolic systems, and of course we are. I mean, those adaptations are what make us better runners. But it's really important with 8 weeks to go to the race that you also understand that your training sessions are helping you learn the discipline of positive thought and how you're going to handle the day. And I'm sure you all know people who you just think of as being mentally tougher than others. And the question is why? And what I want to put to you now in this clip and then give you some tips about how you can direct your thoughts is that being mentally tough is not something you're born with. It's something that you learn as much as you learn how to do hill training or speed work or long runs. And there are certain disciplines that you have to think about. And let's talk very quickly about what those are. So the first concept, and you see this all the time with elite athletes, not just in running, but in other sports like rugby and canoeing, triathlon, swimming, is that our brains don't understand the concept of negative. In other words, if you have tired legs, or if you develop something of a stitch, or if you're feeling a little bit lightheaded, the one thing you don't want to say is don't think about that stitch. Because you can't actively ignore something. Because the moment you tell yourself to ignore it, of course you think about it. For example, if I said to you, do not think about pink elephants running around in this room, of course you're going to be thinking about them right now. So it's really important. The first thing is that every single instruction you give yourself must be in the positive. So in other words, if you're running up Constantia Neck or Southern Cross Drive, rather tell yourself positive thoughts and positive instructions than tell yourself not to do something. So don't say, don't drop your knees, don't drop your head, don't slow down. Rather say, hold the pace. It's a slightly different way of putting it, but it makes all the difference to how you interpret it. Then secondly, and there's quite a little bit of research on this, is where do you direct your focus? And generally speaking, there are two spectrums to how you focus. And the one is called associative thought, and the other is dissociative. If we start with dissociative, that would be thoughts like, have I left the kettle on this morning? Have I given the dog enough food? Is my wife going to remember to pick me up at the finish line? Whereas associative thoughts are thoughts that are specifically directed to the activity that you're doing. So as you are running along, your thoughts might be, how is my arm carry? How are my feet moving? How's my breathing? Is my form good? What sort of speed am I going at? Is it the correct pace? And what research has found is that associative thought is a much more effective way to think than dissociative thought. Now I know that many of you might go out and run specifically because you want to dissociate. It might be your 45 minutes of getting away from the stresses of life, and that's fine. But when you're doing harder training, hill sessions, interval sessions, speed work, or those long runs, and particularly on race day, it's really important to learn the discipline of thinking specifically about the task, rather than trying to distract yourself. It certainly seems to improve performance. And then finally, learn how to compartmentalize. And this is a discipline that takes a lot of practice, and it's something that you'll have to start now. By 2 oceans, you still won't have mastered it, but it's something to build into your running over a number of years. And that's breaking everything down into smaller segments. There's that saying that even the longest journey starts with that first step, and that's the kind of approach you need to have. So you're not running 56 kilometers, you're running 1 kilometer 56 times. And even within that 1 kilometer, the race can be segmented. So for example, I know that Paula Radcliffe, who's the women's world record holder in the marathon, uses a strategy where she actually counts her strides. And she'll count up to 100 and then reset the clock and count to another 100. And that way she stays in the moment. She doesn't think, I've only done 10 kilometers, I've got 32 to go and I'm already feeling tired. The only thing she's thinking about is get to the next 100 and then let's go from there. And it's that discipline of staying in the moment, not allowing the race to overwhelm you, that will allow you to respond to those little negative moments during the race. So counting steps, looking for landmarks, using fellow runners and saying I'm just going to get up to that group in front of me, then I'm going to relax, or I'm just going to stay where I am right now. These are small strategies that you can use, but practice them now. I've given you 3, you can come up with others, you can be as creative as you'd like to, but use them in the training over the next 8 weeks, and I guarantee you that on race day, when that difficult moment comes, you'll be able to overcome it. Good luck, and we'll chat again next week.